One way to learn the precise meaning of a word is to look into the origin of the English word, that is, the language from which it came. And in fact, if you've studied for standardized exams where have questions about vocabulary, a trick that teachers often give you is to look at the prefixes and the suffixes in English because many of them come from either Greek or Latin. So it's a reasonable way to get started to try to figure out what philosophy means by looking at the etymology of the word. Now, philosophy is derived from two Greek words. I should mention the history of philosophy, the history of Western philosophy, really is in ancient Greece. You might have heard of, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Greek people who are very well known, who were some of the earliest philosophers. But the word philosophy comes from two Greek words. The first one, philos, love, and the second word Sophia, love, wisdom. So philosophy is the love of wisdom or the love of knowledge. We'll see how far that gets us in a second. And you should only know, I mentioned Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Plato wrote a book, The Republic, in which he's dealing with certain questions of ethics and political philosophy, but in this book, he makes the claim that the true philosopher is the lover of wisdom. In Greek, I imagine philosophia is sitting in there. What's kind of strange about his political views was that he claimed that philosophers ought to be kings. Now, the interesting thing is, if you'd ever been at a meeting of a philosophy department trying to establish policies, I'm not sure philosophers were the best people to be kings, but he had his reasons, and I shouldn't denigrate Plato's contribution to philosophy because it is certainly immense. It's certainly very great. But that's what Plato said about it. But still, it gives us some idea. It has to do with love, wisdom, and knowledge, but it's still not clear what it is. So let's try, to dig a little deeper in the history of philosophy. Here's a little schematic that I put together. If we go back to Athens, where Greek philosophy started in 400 BC, the reason 400 BC, Plato's teacher, somebody that many people have heard of, Socrates, was executed in Greece for doing philosophy in 399 BCE, before the Common Era. But basically, all of the disciplines in those days were called philosophy. It was anybody who sought knowledge, anybody who was trying to get wisdom, any wise guy, not in the sense that we use it today, but any wise person was studying philosophy. Now, if we leap forward, that's what would have been taught at Kingsborough Community College in Athens, but Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, I did this last year, had this slide last year, they would see a whole slew of different academic disciplines. In fact, I just mentioned academic discipline. The word academia, which they sometimes refer to colleges as that is, their academic institutions, they're part of academia, comes from a place, Hecademos, I think it was, the academy, which was Plato's school in Athens. It was in a place that was named there after some Greek hero. But in any event, getting back to the issue at hand, today we would see biology, chemistry, physics, physical sciences, history, philosophy, political science, behavioral sciences. I wanted to make the slide small. Sociology, psychology, English, literature, communication. All of these things back in those days were back in Athens, were part of philosophy. But today, a lot of these have branched off. That is, when particular disciplines like the sciences, biology, which got started all as part of philosophy, found a methodology, a way to solve their problems, a way to make progress that was kind of unique to the discipline, it became its own discipline. And in fact, many of you may have heard of a man named Sir Isaac Newton. He's the guy with the apple hitting his head under the tree and discovering gravity, or better known for some of the basic laws of physics. He had an endowed chair at Cambridge, I believe it was, where he was either Oxford or Cambridge. I think it was Cambridge. And the endowed chair was the chair of not physics, but natural philosophy. So it was even up till from 400 BC up till the 1600s, even later than that, all the disciplines were still known as philosophy. But now, a couple of centuries later, philosophy has lost a lot of the areas that it studied, but there's still something central to it. But the following is still true, and we see that. That is, this ends up not being not a good definition of the discipline today, because while it was probably true back in ancient Greece when Plato was writing, that anybody who pursued wisdom, lover of wisdom. I mean, if you think about a lover of wisdom, what do you do when you love something? You pursue it. You go after it. I sometimes say kidding around. I got to be careful today. They'll probably throw me out of academia. You stalk wisdom. You stalk knowledge. But any of those guys back in ancient Greece was probably called a philosopher. But that's no longer true. Because if you think about it, there are a lot of people that love wisdom. You take courses, or maybe you're looking at courses on the internet. In other disciplines, the people who are teaching those courses in general love the discipline, and lovers of wisdom, you might say, historians are lovers, mathematicians, scientists. Even if you think about it, the guy next door or down a block who can quote every statistics on baseball, football, basketball, knows everything. I mean, he pursues a certain kind of knowledge, but he's a sports expert. And even in many other fields. So today, while the definition kind of gets us at what we're looking for, it's not precise enough to tell us what we're studying in philosophy. But to do that, we're going to turn to trying to figure out what questions about knowledge, about wisdom, philosophers are worried about today.